Hi, welcome to A Foreigner in the Philippines. Now, one of the things that Beth and I both get answered a lot, and we get it commented on it a lot. As you can imagine, maybe you haven't noticed that there's a great age difference between Beth and I. So, very many times people will say to me, "You look younger now than you did last year," or some other such terrible lie that I welcome with open arms. So the question, this is a question that Beth put to me and said, maybe this would be a good title for a video. She says the title should be, where is the title? Does marrying a young Filipina keep you young? Now this is something that many men will be wrestling with. I've just had a man agonizing to me several times, several different emails that he sent or messages, and he sent me a picture of the most beautiful young girl. She only looked about 18, going on 12 to me, but she obviously was at least not a minor, and she was indeed very pretty. Would he be able to take that kind of energy around him is something that every man would have to ask himself. And not only would he be able to take it, would he want it? Would it sit well with him in the end? In fact, I did have a question put to me in a comment, which I didn't like, which I answered a bit snarkily before I think I deleted it. I'm not sure. No, I don't think I did delete it. It's probably still there. The man says, do you ever feel, obviously referring to Beth, do you ever feel that you're talking to a, what was the question? Do you ever feel that you're talking to a 12-year-old? And I said to him, I answered back, I said, no, I don't, but sometimes, in fact, now and then, I feel that I'm reading the comments of a 12-year-old. In other words, anybody that would take the time to say something which would obviously insult and offend, must be somewhere around the 11 or 12 or 13-year-old mark, but we do get quite a few of those. How does it affect you when you are constantly exchanging viewpoints with someone who has so much less in terms of experience and I won't say education, because I'm not a terribly educated man. Believe it or not, well, I'm sure that you will be able to believe it. But I left school when I was 15, and the schooling that I had prior to 15 had been cobbled together over several years of moving from one school to another, as my mother demonstrated that she was part gypsy. And so I never quite got any train of thought and training from my schooling. By the time I got to the next school, they'd moved on from the lesson that I should have been learning at the last school. So, I left quite ignorant, didn't I? I didn't know very much, did I? 15 and a half, I went into the coal mines. Actually, let me see, I went to the coal mines a little bit around 15 and 2 or 3 months. That was when I got a job in the coal mines, and I went to do my training at Robin Hood Pit, which I've said many times before. And I did that. So my extra education was nothing to do with trying to learn a better grasp of math or geography or politics or art or anything. It was how to wash the coal dust out from under my eyes. That was my biggest challenge then. Well, my father must have got tired or sympathetic or just felt sorry for me, He knew that I was interested in music, and he managed to write a letter to the bandmaster of the Argyll and Sutherland Highlanders, and cut a long story short, I was very soon into the army as a boy soldier. So, education, not very much at all. For most men, your education would be far and above even someone who may be a college graduate from, or a university graduate. Beth is a university graduate. Now, while I find attitudes are different and sometimes hard to understand, I don't think of her as any less educated than I am, because reality forces me to admit that my education would not stand any test of inquiry from anybody who was serious. But other things that I've learned from living with a woman who is a lot less in age than I am, is that it has in what seems like a no-brainer to decide. I now no longer look at, even though Beth has sometimes referred to it as the last part of my life, I don't look at it that way. I've begun to look ahead. I've begun to look into what I hope is a long distance future. So your thinking changes when you are living with a much younger woman. Now, when you're living with a much younger Filipina, now this is, I think, a much different thing. It's a much different experience. Filipinas and Filipino people are special people. I don't see any doubt about this. The Filipino as a people have an inner sense, an inner reservoir of joy, which other races, and I've known a few, they don't have, myself included. I'm a former professional musician and performer, and I've got a great deal of experience on stage in front of a lot of people. Now, that's not fame. I had what you might call a working fame, in that I played in a top 40 band, which covered all of the top 40, good, bad and indifferent, and we played all kinds of venues and ballrooms and hotels, and we did all of that, and we were two of the bands were really quite well known. So I had a wide variety of experiences, but I look at some of the television programs. Now, admittedly, I don't always understand what's happening, so it's not about the content, but about the level of just how happy they seem. And I remember coming from the hotel, from the airport, when we were coming home the last time, and we were put on a bus out on the apron. We arrived at Cebu, and we were put on a bus, and heaven knows why, but it had to make several circuits of doing various places before it got to a point where it could drop us off. In fact, I was wondering if we were still in Cebu. Yes. And I noticed lots of workers who were taking a break. I noticed flight attendants walking along together, and they laugh and smile so easily. It seems as soon as they open their mouth, they're smiling. It just seems to be something that comes so naturally. And a lot of Westerners don't even understand that they can laugh in the face of adversity to an extreme. In fact, in some of the cases that we've helped, Baby Jane was the most extreme. baby Jane had broken her leg, and as a foreigner I was at a complete loss as to why she appeared to be smiling. What could you possibly be smiling about? This child of yours has a broken leg. And that was before I actually knew to be able to accept that different body language is very much prevalent in different cultures. And so one of the things as an old guy, especially if we're a bit of a cranky old fart, you and I are not part of that, okay? You and I are accepted. Anyway, you'll notice that things which you thought were important, well, it's the principle of the thing, isn't it? They'll just laugh at that. And they'll keep laughing until you stop trying to be so serious, you idiot. So that keeps you young. Remember what I said a long time ago about George Burns. I love George Burns, George and Gracie. And they looked at George Burns when he was in his 80s, and somebody said to him, George, how do you do it? You just look happy. He had a lot to be happy for at the time. He had two 24-year-old beauties on his arm, so I guess that was enough to make a lot of them happy. But anyway, his response to that was, he said, I tried to get through each day with the minimum amount of aggravation. Now, a Filipino doesn't have to be told that. A Filipino knows that. I think that's stamped on their rear end when they're born, that it's not worth sweating the small stuff, as George Carlin used to say. And he used to talk a lot about how us Westerners just make everything so serious. And if I'm up here and I might be doing something, I might be reading a book, I might be having a coffee and some alone time, and Beth is bonding with Nanai and Lena, her sister, and maybe Jessica, her other sister, and Bewley, and they're all down there. Oh gosh, what's the sound that assails your ears? It's laughter, and people just laugh. They laugh. I can imagine a foreigner saying, well, what the bloody hell are they laughing at? What's funny? It's not that everything's funny, it's just that life is good. And that's sometimes in the face of the worst kind of poverty, the worst kind of not having anything, and yet they can still laugh. I've taken a taxi through terrible slums in Manila, in Cebu, in quite a few places where people are living on the edge of saving up to have nothing. And yet you will still see children laughing, you will still see men joking with each other, joshing, sharing good times, being with their work friends. And you'll see the women, and they're doing the same. So, in answer to Beth's question, does marrying a younger Filipina make you feel younger? I would have to say yes. This is a foreigner in the Philippines. Good luck with whatever life you're choosing for yourself, and don't sweat the small stuff, as George used to say. Bye for now.